Welcome back. This is Frank Demore with the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, and today is November the 28th, 2011, and this is my second video for today. My first video was discussing Revelation chapter 6, verse 6, where people will be working all day long to buy one small meal, and I've been showing you the increases in prices that have been going over the years, and now I want to show you just some of the reasons why the prices are going up. As I said before, the prices can be affected by the environment. They can be affected by other factors as pestilence, for example, insects and whatnot. But before I go into the detail on that, let me show you what the Lord shows us in His Word, because that's the most important part. Now, in Luke 21, chapter 21, that is, in verse 11, I'm going to scroll down and get to the King James Bible, because that's the Bible that I use. Let me get right here. It says King James Bible 2000, all right? I'm going to quote the word. It says, "And great earthquakes shall be in various places." Now, in my first video, I gave you a bunch of information about current earthquakes and many earthquakes in different places. Just wanted to make sure that you pointed out, just in case this is the first time that you found my YouTube channel, or you know very little about prophecy. Earthquakes are one of those prophecies we are supposed to be looking for. But the Lord goes on in verse 11, it says, "And famines and pestilence." All right, now you can have pestilence as disease, and you can also have pestilence like we saw in the Old Testament, where the flies and the bugs, the insects, the locusts were eating up the crops and whatnot. So keep that in mind as we go through the news reports. "And fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven." So we're going to concentrate now on the pestilence, and keep in mind my first video about Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Now here is, I'm going to point out to you, one of the reasons why we see prices going up could be, as I said, insects, infestations. We've been seeing a lot of that in the news too, and again, you will see the documents in my book if you go there to my website, BibleProphecyMan.com, and you can download that information today for free in my book. It says, "Invasive species are a blight on the U.S. landscape. America is under siege, not from a foreign power, but by invasive species slowly working their way across the nation, leaving a sometimes devastated and often changed landscape in their wake." Now, what we have here is insects. These are ants, and these ants can tear away crops and cause a lot of devastation. But let me go on and tell you exactly what it says here. It says, "Just as the Dutch elm disease from Asia removed an iconic tree from the American landscape beginning in the 1940s, the emerald ash boreal may conquer the ash tree in coming years. West Nile virus from Africa killed 57 Americans last year, and work crews often encounter giant Burmese pythons in South Florida." So they're just giving you a gist of some of the problems they're having around the country. The latest addition to the list of non-native creepy crawlers is a hairy, crazy ant. The tiny foragers are believed to have come from South America. They first got to the Caribbean in the late 19th century and are working their way through Florida and the southeast. First discovered 9 years ago in Texas, an exterminator, Tom Roseberry, the ants are now also in Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi, says Jim Fredericks, director of the technological services for the National Pest Management Association in Fairfax, Virginia. And according to Texas A&M University, the ants are semi-tropical, so cooler temperatures as they move northward should eventually stop them. But it's not going to stop their migration in the warm areas. Now I'm going to scroll up here and give you let me show you. There's another article that is associated with this, and it talks about the what it's doing as far as food prices and whatnot. And essentially what this is going to say is similar to the first article, but it says invasive species aren't just exotic animals, scary snakes, or annoying insects. They can also be bacteria and viruses that can kill people. Although it's difficult to say what the most harmful invasive species is, I probably point to West Nile virus, says Christopher Dunjigi of the Federal National Invasive Species Council, NISC. This year, 36 people have died from the virus, Center of Disease Control and Prevention says. And between 1999 and 2010, there were 1,220 fatal cases. Now, invasives or invasions can also hurt agriculture. As I said, we were dealing with the crops, destroying crops. Hurt agriculture and hurt or hit consumers in their pocketbook. Again, associated with the rise of food prices, some of the reasons why they can go up. For example, some breakfast items cost more because of them, including orange juice. It's more expensive because the Asian bacterial disease, Danganji says, it cost Florida orange growers more than $6 million between 1915 and 1933 to eradicate citrus canker in the southeastern in the United States. The disease, probably carried on leaves, appeared again in 1980, requiring 20 million trees to be burned at the cost of $94 million, according to the University of California, Riverside Central of Invasive Species Research. It has recently reappeared in Florida. So these things have come back again. And if you want to again, remember what the Lord said about the birth pangs. Now here again, we're going back into the price increases. Always keep in mind what the Lord warned about. These people working all day long for one small meal. And this is just the beginning. So we know that things are going to get a lot worse. The price of a loaf of bread is higher because of the carnal bunt, the fungi disease in wheat that first appeared in the U.S. in 1996. It appears to have originated in India but made its way to Mexico in the 1970s, and from there to Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. So again, we have a disease that's hitting the wheat. And if you do a Google search on UG99, that is another disease that's killing wheat in many of the countries around the world, including those countries in Asia, for example, or the Middle East, that are these high exporting nations of wheat. And it goes on to say sausage or steak. If you have either, you're paying to keep the soybean aphid away from the crop that feeds cattle and pigs. The insect originated in Asia but was discovered in Wisconsin and the upper Midwest in 2000. Now, 21 states, and results in the lower yields and higher meat prices. So I mean, if you watch the news, you'll pick up these articles, and it's not just in the United States. These things are spreading to the different nations, especially now because in our generation, where the Lord told us in Daniel 12:4 that this last generation would increase in knowledge, but they would also be going back and forth. We know by, the inventions of obviously the airplanes, there's massive transit all over the world, and a lot of these insects, a lot of these diseases are being picked up by people moving all over the world, and it's starting to spread globally. And this is one of the concerns, and I document the scientists' concerns in my book. So if you'd like to read that information, just go to my book and download that information for free. Again, it's www.bibleprophecyman.com. And please, if you just found my YouTube channel, go to my website there at BibleProphecyMan.com and take the advantage of getting a free book today. And I'm trying to keep this book as current as I can possibly keep it. I have a lot going between the prophecy website, the ministry of live presentations, and doing the post every single day. But I'm going to do my best to keep this book very, very current. And it's right now, it's of October the 28th, and I'm getting the new material assembling. I'm going to be taking off a couple of days to add that new material so that it will be right up front, so that if you want to witness to somebody, you won't be giving him a book that is old. It's going to be new information, updated as much as I can. And I'm hoping that the Holy Spirit will use this book to drive the people to Jesus Christ.